Have his way, good soul. Mosiah chapter 3, verse 8 and 19. For the natural man is an enemy to God, and has been from the fall of Adam, and will be forever and ever, unless he yields to the enticings of the Holy Spirit, and putteth off the natural man, and becometh a saint through the atonement of Christ the Lord, and becometh as a child, submissive, meek, humble, patient, full of love, willing to submit to all things which the Lord seeth fit to inflict upon him, even as a child doth submit to his father. A child isn't always, as they say here. It's because a child is born with natural instincts and desires, needs. Let's get to Galatians here. Now the works of the flesh for fantasy, are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditious conspiracies, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revilings, and then the fruits of the Spirit. There's one thing I was able to figure out, which, combined with my associative memory, assisted me in helping the church, for which they thanked me by trying to force me out and from the job. You're welcome. I would have saved them over $1 million, but they chose not to listen to me. And then I went and saved them infinite amounts of money by redesigning their beehive warehouse. And so they thanked me by kicking me out. They were trying to figure out a way to get me off of the footnoting committee, because I had the Jesus card, so they couldn't outright do it. So they were trying to find other ways to do it. And this is the natural man that they were utilizing, as we'll get to. But in redesigning the warehouse, I had to also factor in the human natural man, because the natural man is uncontrollable when conditions are set for such. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is set for such. The natural man emerges from scarcity. And there are two forms. The one you saw from the scriptures that I read to you is the idolatrous portion of it, where religion, specifically Christian, LDS, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, lies to you, misinforms you, miseducates you, changes definitions, incorrectly translates, screws everything up, and thus creates checking the church news, and sure enough, they attack. Because they're going, uh-oh, he's doing a church news video. Get him! This is the natural man response. The church teaches idolatry and the Mormons perceive a threat from me, because I'm a critic of the church, because idolatry makes people stupid and criminal, and the natural man. And so thus you just saw in the example where Mormons commit cyber terrorism to protect and defend the church, because they think that the church is weak and cannot defend itself, that the church is lying, and therefore I am threatening to expose the lies of the church because the church can't tell the truth. It's a backwards thinking process, and like I said, stupid. Idolatry makes people stupid. When Constantine created Christianity, we now, in hindsight, call it the Dark Ages, because of the mental darkness that flooded the minds of the people with the creation of Jesus, turning everybody into anti-Semites. And so, yeah, that's a big factor in that. But the other part is psychology. Psychology is idolatrous, because they likewise, like religion, use fallacious arguments. That's part of the Dark Ages, was not just dismissal of science, but also the dismissal of logic, Socratic methodology specifically. Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, morons. And then money or monetary systems of economy that require objects for whatever system of economy you utilize, whether it be barter, trade, cash, digital, Bitcoin. You're turning objects into idols and giving them assigned value, similar to religion assigning good or bad moral values, spiritual values in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And in psychology, right or wrong, good or evil values, ethical values they will claim, because they don't want to claim to be similar to religion, but they are. And so when you're idolatrous, you create a scarcity or a threat of loss or a threat of harm beyond basic needs, basic necessities. And this is where babies exhibit the natural man, because they are fully dependent upon parents or other humans to provide them with their basic necessities. And so when a baby is hungry, the baby is incapable of communicating, and so thus the emotional response of crying. And if it gets extreme, it's difficult for the baby to get them to eat because they're in such an emotional fit. That is the natural man. And so learning to educate children properly as babies will help parents when the child grows up. If you don't educate your child properly, they'll go through the terrible twos and the terrible tweens, the terrible teens, the terrible adults, etc. You have to teach them correctly. And so when you have parents who weren't taught correctly, how are they going to teach correctly their children unless they learn that they were taught incorrectly and then learn how to learn so that they can teach properly themselves? So basic necessities, food, sex are the most common that we experience, even shelter. Energy and fuel, communication, clothing, those kinds of basic necessities. We as humans must have them in order to survive. And so when they are scarce, it creates a survival of the fittest mode within us. And the Galatians behaviors emerge, the natural man behaviors emerge. And there are capacities within humans, and we see it in animals as well, that are able to self-sacrifice for certain other humans, not for all humans. Parents will sacrifice for their children, family for family, friend for friend, that type of a thing. But you typically will see a human sacrificing for strangers and abandon his family and friends to suffer when there's a survival of the fittest at stake. You don't tend to see that. And so that's how I was able to fix Beehive Clothing, was to deal with the human fear of scarcity. Their job. And thus no money to purchase basic necessities. And so it's kind of weird with money in a monetary system, whether it be goods or services or some kind of cash system, is because people tend to hoard the money, like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, with their greed and their selfishness and their hatred towards others. But you also see it among other humans as well. And so seeing it with the church, it's not surprising. The church is idol worshippers, are idol worshippers, and therefore exhibit the same exact behavior as the multi-billionaires. They do not care for human life. They use humans as slaves to build up their idol-worshipping god of money. But the basic necessities is different. And so it's easy to eliminate the idolatrous natural man simply with correct education, science, and logical Socratic methodology. But when you have people that are too far gone, it's almost impossible. And that's where the story of the Zoramites comes in, because you have the poor Zoramites who are kicked out because of their poverty, and now they're lost. They don't know how to worship God because they've been indoctrinated in idolatry. And, fortunately, the literal history reveals to us Alma and Amulek found them. Rather than a Korahor. Like on a TV show. I mean, these are historical documents. I mean, thank goodness the hero steps in to save the day. Whew, that was a close one. And so, yes, Alma and Amulek teaches them science, agronomy, seed likened unto a word. You must produce the fruit, i.e. the results of the word. And then everything's all better. But you see the consequences for the rich Zoramites who stayed behind. thought they knew better and were better than their brethren who were chosen by God. The great spirit of Christianity, Jesus. And they were utterly destroyed. And so these are the consequences of the natural man, is that it creates a survival of the fittest condition. And in the Zoramites' case, it was the Lamanites who came in, and they are already established in the stories as being idolatrous natural men. And so thus why they wanted to conquer any and all Nephites. And so you see it also with King Noah and his people as well. And again, you see both the survival of fittest among King Noah and his people, as well as the Lamanites when they come in and destroy the place. You see that emerge as a consequence. And so in order to put off the natural man, it's not something that you just cope with when your basic necessities are scarce. As you read through the Book of Mormon, you see how Nephi and other prophets develop civilizations through agronomy. Seed, word, fruit, results. Nephi gets ideas, he writes them out in the blueprints, and then builds the blueprints. Produces the results of the inspiration in his brain, just like I did for Beehive Clothing's warehouse. And so to remove scarcity is key. Thus Zion, we are told, cannot have the idolatrous economic system of a monetary system of economy. Because if you use a monetary system of economy, the natural man will result in a survival of the fittest that will destroy your civilization. You cannot build a civilization on a monetary system of economy. No matter how much Sid Meier's rigs his Civilization 3 complete to demonstrate that communism is the best way to go. To win the game. My favorite computer game, which I haven't been playing that forever. I gotta get the other table set up and then set up the computer. That's the only computer that can play it because it's an obsolete computer for the obsolete game. But with the church setting things up for utter destruction in the coming days, I just have to store it away, hoping that I can get to Zion, hoping that Mormons will put off the natural Mormon of idolatry and then work on eliminating the natural man of basic necessities. And so, yeah, when you're building a civilization, you've got to take care of everybody. That's why the United States of America had their revolution from King George and established a constitutional republic. And what you're witnessing these days are groups, numerous groups, all trying to destroy America and our constitutional republic, as they demand that the Constitution is a failure and therefore we need amendments for specific groups, ignoring the general protections already guaranteed in the Constitution. For example, is it pro-life or pro-choice? Well, 14th Amendment, Section 1 has already been there. Anybody who's born now gets rights. And so there is no debate over whether sperm, embryo, or fetus is considered a human deserving of rights. They're not. The woman is. She's already born. But you see the enemy destroying our Constitution by claiming that a woman doesn't have rights. We have to give rights to the fetus, embryo, or sperm. So you see that also with all these different DEI groups, as they tried to put DEI laws in place. But you got the false dichotomous other extreme that wants the chosen ones to have all of the jobs and the placements in positions of authority and control over mankind and their behaviors. Neither of those are correct. Whether you're liberal or conservative, you're both wrong. There are other options, and it's the constitutional republic. Freedom of speech. It's for everybody, and so you can't take away the freedom of speech of another with bullying, terrorist hate speech. That is not considered free speech. It's blatantly obvious. It's already in the Constitution. Because when you're a bully, when you threaten somebody, when you're a terrorist, you are causing the other person of the bullying terrorist threats to be silent, to not have rights to speech. And so therefore, the bully terrorist threat maker are the criminals. That's easy. Same with freedom of religion. Fine, you've got freedom of religion. You don't need more. You don't take away the freedoms and liberties of others, claiming your religious beliefs deny other people theirs. And deny other people their freedom of speech, deny other people their freedom of the press, deny other people their petition for a redress of grievances when you attack them and try to take away their life, liberty, and property simply because you claim you're a religion and are exempt from the law. And anybody familiar with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and their religious freedom movement with evangelicals? Through the Council for National Policy? Project 2025? Yep. That's the church. Church is the enemy because of their idolatry. And they purposely are doing it. They know they're wrong. The prophets know there is no Jesus. You think they speak directly to Jesus, and that's where you just got conned. Because Jesus doesn't exist. How do I know this? Oh no, you can't know, Travis. You don't know. They said they do, and then so I believe them. And we got to validate their beliefs, or my beliefs, of their beliefs, of what they... No. When was Jesus created with Christianity? See? Logic, science, Socratic methodology. The first creed of Christianity. Jesus is created out of nothing to be nothing. Homoousion. And thus the Dark Ages. So Mormons, they think they're being clever. It's non-Trinitarian now. You still replace the Jews. You just changed the nature and character of Jesus, but did nothing to restore the interpretation of Scripture back to prophecy and revelation. You still think it's literal history. Oops. Anti-Semites. Natural man. Through idolatry. And so, yeah, this is the one thing that I worry about with Zion is that I've designed it to eliminate the idolatry part and to take care of most basic necessities, as everybody gets what they need and what they want, as the storehouses would provide it, and you just make sure that the levels are supplied and are replenished when they get to a certain low point, so that it keeps rotating as needs and wants demand. So let it be supplied. And then we don't need to worry about slave labor, because we have robotic automation that can do the hard labor instead of hurting humans. But the sex part, women will still break a man's heart. And thus, the natural man emerges with this scarcity. This is why men act weird around women, and women don't understand it, because their version of scarcity is different. And so, you see men competing for the affections of a woman, getting competitive, getting abusive, getting devious, all to try to win the favor of the woman over the other guy. All of that is the natural man, based on the basic necessity of sex. And so that's the one thing that I am unable to remedy for Zion, though much of it will be taken care of, because the idolatry part is gone. So you're not going to have sexual abusers who say that God will smite you down for having those thoughts of me, or abusing a woman saying that she's a slut whore because she's not covering up and hiding every single piece of flesh of her skin. No, all of that will be gone from your minds if you go to Zion. No, we're talking more about the monetary system is gone, so women don't have to feel insecure about choosing a guy who is poor versus a guy who is rich, but the guy who's rich doesn't have an interest in her, and so thus the conflict in her heart, and thus her natural woman instincts kick in as she believes there's a scarcity involved. And you get your mothers telling you, you need to get a rich man as soon as you can before you plump up, become undesirable, because you're not staying in this house. You know, all these stresses. And then the abuses and society telling women that they're ugly and that they're deficient and they need to purchase these products to cover themselves up and hide themselves and make themselves different than who they actually are. All this abuse just will stop in Zion. And so all of those things will be gone, so that, you know, boy meets girl and they can live happily ever after. But there's always that potential. But as long as the education is correct to remove idolatry, as long as basic necessities are met, that should minimize it. So there won't be any need for stealing, won't be any need for coveting, won't be any need for adultery. You know, 10 Commandments will not really be needed anymore, because everybody's needs are taken care of and are educated properly. And so, the church is not wanting to provide for this for Mormons. And so thus, even though this is a church news video, there's nothing really in the church news other than the Casper, Wyoming temple is now having its dedication, or its open house, in preparation for the dedication in the coming days. So, yeah, and so if you see the map of temples in the United States, you see very clearly the wall of temples in the West. Tried to warn you. The church wants their land back. And that's because of the scarcity of the land. Idolatry. And thinking that they own the land, that they are the rightful owners and rulers of the land and those on it, the slaves under their command. And so that scarcity created by idolatry of the Danites through Brigham Young is what drives them to want to overthrow the government of the United States of America, and are turning Mormons who fall for their idolatry into that trap. And just because you left the church doesn't mean you left the idolatrous teachings of the church. You just turned the idolatry from faith promoting into doubt promoting. You still have that idolatrous thinking. And so now, instead of Joseph Smith's rock in a hat is the gift and power of God, you now call it a fraud to try to scam people and make money. You're both wrong. Joseph Smith had nothing to do with the composition of the Book of Mormon, as yesterday's video explaining the original church history rather than that other Exmo fraud, con man, who thinks he can summarize it in 16 minutes. What I gave you yesterday was the summary, and it was an hour and a half or something like that, wasn't it? Yeah, you can't summarize a church history topic in just a few minutes. It cannot be done. I've been doing this for years. Because once you got idolatry going in your head, it just spreads like weeds, literally weeds, which is the agronomy thing with actual food versus weeds. The wheat and the tares. The enemy sows the tares in the wheat on purpose to destroy. So yeah, that's a perfect analogy. So there you have it. So that's what you're supposed to do, is purge yourself of all the church's teachings and learn how to learn. And hopefully we can fix the government and the economy if you go to Zion. Hint, hint. So I can go back to playing my game.